Hi, Gibaud, and today I'm going to try to answer a question that I receive very often, even more since I made the video the other day, this one about my full Fujifilm camera, explaining also other cameras I have, and people asking what is the best sensor format. It's hard to say, so I want to tell 5 pros and 5 cons of each format. Starting with Micro Four Thirds, then APS-C, then full frame, and then medium format, trying to be as objective as possible. So let's start. First of all, some people think that when they change camera, they change sensor size, and they think the better results are due to sensor size. That may be right, but sometimes that's simply because they change range of camera, that on entry-level APS-C camera, for example, and then they go to a advanced level full frame, and this is more the reason. They have maybe a better processor, or the camera was 10 years old and now is a month old. So obviously there are some differences, but it's not always due to sensor size, but just the time, the better technology and better things like this. If they had a recent APS-C, maybe they would see also a lot better results. Okay, so that's important. So let's start with Micro Four Thirds. So in favor, normally the lenses are smaller. Not always, because lately we've seen some like OM system that got a 100 to 600 lens, millimeter lens. It's a full frame lenses by Sigma that is adapted to Micro Four Thirds, so the size is massive. Okay, but normally size it's smaller. The crop factor is also a benefit if you do macro or if you do long distance photography, because obviously the angle that covers is you reach it with less millimeter, I would say. So if you have a 300 millimeter in Micro Four Thirds, this is the equivalent of 600 millimeter in full frame. So the lens is smaller, often it's cheaper, and the volume, the price is cheaper, and the weight is smaller also. So that's a big advantage. The following one, it's hard to understand for many people. I don't know why they don't get it, but with the same depth of field and the same equivalent focal length, you get more light. So many people say with Micro Four Thirds you get less light. That's not right if you use it in real situation. Let's say I'm doing a wedding reportage. I've got the bride and the groom. I want to have both in focus. Okay, so on a full frame, let's say I'm in church. I'm about 30 degrees sideways. I want both of them in focus. In full frame, I probably have to be at 5.6, f5.6. On my Micro Four Thirds, at 2.8, I will get the same depth of field. I will get both in focus, but I get 4 times more light. So it means that I do get more light, effective light, because the way a Micro Four Thirds is being used, if you want the same depth of field, you will get more light. That's also a benefit if you're doing flash photography, for example, studio, and you want to have a portrait with in focus from nose to ears. In full frame, maybe you will be on f4 or 5.6, and in your Micro Four Thirds, maybe f2 or 2.8. That means you need to have less power for your lighting. So you have cheaper light, or if you have the same power, still you can recycle a lot faster. So that's another benefit. It's 12 bits. So 12 bits of color means the files are a lot smaller, lighter, faster to manage, less power for your computer, all this, so that's a benefit. And the depth of field is more important. So if you want to have shallow depth of field, that's not for you. But if you want to if you need or you want to have everything in focus, like product photography or maybe landscape, or macro, for example, you don't want to have just the tip of the leg of a fly to be in focus, you want the full fly, then that's a lot better. So that's a benefit. Now, against. Well, at the same ISO, you get more noise, but that's important to specify. Let's say I get my full frame camera, same amount of same resolution, 6400 ISO. I get less noise than my Micro Four Thirds 20 million pixel at 6400. But as I explained in the benefits, You don't normally need to go that high with your ISO. You probably don't need to go to 6400. Very often you don't go over 1600. So that means you will not have this noise problem. You probably will have the same noise at 1600 than at 6400 on the full frame. So it means it's not a problem. But it's true. If you compare side to side, same ISO, you get more noise on Micro Four Thirds. If you are a fan of shallow depth of field, that's a problem. It's against, because unless you get a really wide aperture lenses like 1.2 or 0.95, like there is a Volander, for example, then you may get a shallow depth of field, but you get a lot bigger lens, a lot more expensive lens, a lot more volume lens, heavy also. So that means you lose a bit the benefit of Micro Four Thirds regarding size and price. So, but that's an inconvenience. The dynamic range is less with these 12 bits of color, so it means it's hard to recover highlights and things like this, more complicated, and we'll see after for low light. And other disadvantage, the ISO start at 200. So although ISO is always a big lie about camera makers, actual ISO is always lower than what they say. But the ISO of 200, it means if I want to do outdoor photography with flash, I want to cut the ambient light, it's a lot easier to cut if I'm on 100 ISO than 200 ISO. So that may be a problem for you. And last, recovering low light. With Micro Four Thirds, you cannot underexpose, because recovering shadows means noise, always. So you always need to understand how to expose always for the highlights at the limit of losing details, just at the limit. This way you get a lot of details in shadows, and you won't have to recover and don't get that much noise. So it's important to understand how it works. Each camera is its way of working, and Micro Four Thirds is really a bit nasty on this side. It's so important not to underexpose, otherwise you cannot recover probably the shadows, okay? And by the way, if you wanted to help me, well, I've activated the member area of my YouTube channel, exclusive video for you. Don't speak about gear, just speak about tuition, about knowledge, about techniques, photography only. So there's a join button, please use it. And by the way, if you want to buy anything, please use my affiliated links. They are in description. That really helps me. And if you buy at K&F Concept website or Lumina Neo, there's a link in description. Use the code ERIC10 and you get a 10% discount. Thank you so much. That really helps me. Let's carry on. Let's speak about APS-C. Well, first Pro, if you look at APS-C lenses, they are smaller than full frame. I speak lenses made for APS-C, not the one you adapt, okay? Also, big benefit, if you want to do short films, video clips, there are a lot of cine lenses S35 format that goes perfect on these APS-C cameras, and that's a great way to start creating videos and things like this. Good idea. Also, as I explained about the Micro Four Thirds, the depth of field and the light, the amount of light, all this, that is a bit more extreme in one side or the other. If you want shallow, it's hard. If you want to have a big depth of field, it's easier. Same thing with light. I think APS-C is more balanced, more in between a full frame and Micro Four Thirds, and more easy to manage in this way. Other advantage, it will recover low light shadows in a bit better than Micro Four Thirds, so it's an advantage. And normally, there are some exceptions, but camera bodies are smaller than full frame. There are some exceptions. If you look at the Fuji X-H2, for example, it's bigger. But if you look at the new X-M5, for example, it is really small. So it depends, and there are many APS-C cameras that are a lot smaller than full frame. So that's an advantage. Against, well, you can put full frame lenses on APS-C, but you need to have really high quality full frame lenses. Many people don't understand that. They think, oh, it's because you just use a sensor. It's not for that reason. It's because the smaller the sensor, the smaller the photos it. That means that you need a really high definition lens. In Micro Four Thirds, lenses were thought for it, and you need 4 times more definition of the lens than in full frame. In APS-C you need twice. Okay, so it means if you put a really high quality full frame lens on APS-C, that's great, no problem, that's fine. But if you put a really entry level full frame lens on APS-C, the results are really bad, okay, because definition is not enough. Okay, another negative point is that brands like Canon, Nikon, Sony, then the exception is Pentax, okay, is not really looking after their APS-C cameras. They don't create good top quality lenses for this APS-C lens, APS-C format. The bodies, there are some exceptions, like there used to be exceptions like the D500 or D300 by Nikon or the 70 by Canon, but since we are looking at mirrorless, the quality is not the same. The exception would be maybe the Sony Alpha 6700 that is weather sealed, all this, but otherwise the quality is not as good. So it's a bit of a pity. If you want to have good quality APS-C, you almost have to look just one brand, which is Fujifilm, if you want mirrorless, okay? Otherwise that's a pity, but Canon, Nikon and Sony are not really looking after this sensor format. One thing that is so important, there are so many APS-C cameras over the years that so many people compare them, but they have nothing to do one with the other. They go from 16 million pixel or less up to 40 million pixel now with some Fujifilm. And some people, they get to some conclusion, but they compare things that have nothing to do with each other. The definition of the sensor, the resolution, the processor, all this. So it's so important when you start comparing APS-C cameras to see when it was made, what resolution you have, what it is for, all this, so you can really compare to see which one is really better or not. Because otherwise you cannot say APS-C are always better or they're always worse. No, it depends on which camera we're speaking about. So it's a bit confusing for some people. They just stay on the word APS-C, but they forget that there are so many APS-C cameras, so it's hard a bit to decide which one is good or not for what you want to do. Now, let's speak about full frame. Well, first thing in favor. If you want a Sony, a Canon or Nikon, nowadays, mirrorless, obviously buy full frame. Because this is the sensor they really look after, they really take care about, and they make the best stabilization for it, the best things, the best lenses for it, the best processor, all this, because they're neglecting their APS-C line. So if you want any of these 3 brands, it is better to get full frame. If you want this brand, they will be better built, better everything. Not because of the sensor size, but because of the decision of these 3 companies that have decided to really take care of the full frame market and neglect the APS-C market, and that's a big problem. So if you want any of these 3 brands, obviously it's better to go full frame. Other advantage, there is a large amount of third-party lens brands, and that's great because we can have many options. Exception with Canon in RF mount, they have a third-party authorization to Sigma and Tamron, but in APS-C only. So Canon is more limited. But if you look at Sony and Nikon, there are so many brands, third-party brands that can deliver great lenses and very often cheaper. Also, if we look at vintage lenses, they are easy to mount with adapters, and as long as they're great, good lenses. I made a video about the importance of the focal length. It will affect the way the ray of light travel, all this, but let's say if you get a really top lens thought for film photography in full frame, at that time 36 by 24, called that way, 135, that will be great. And you have so many options of top lenses you can use, and they were thought for this format, okay? Other benefit, at the same sensor resolution, let's say 20 million pixel in Micro Four Thirds, 20 million APS-C, 20 million in full frame, you will recover the shadows a lot better in full frame. So that's a benefit if you need to. Other benefit, at the same resolution, same thing, less noise at high ISO, okay? So that's important. Now let's look at the cons of full frame. Well, in full frame, you start to have depth of field problems. If you need to have everything in focus, that's going to be a lot more complicated than with APS-C. So very often you're going to do focus stacking, and then so you make several pictures and the point of focus is moving forward and backward, and then you stack them in post-production. In macro photography, product photography, some landscape, that can be a problem. I know some people will say, no, you just close the lens down to 16 million pixels, to f16, sorry, and that's it, f16, f22. But that's a problem, because then you get diffraction. So it's true, maybe you have a 24 million pixel sensor, but if the ray of light is not covering each pixel, because of diffraction it covers 4, then it's like if your sensor was working with 6 million pixels. So you don't get as many details all this, so you have to keep to f8 and then make several pictures and stack them. And that's a problem for some people. So you need to know that it could be okay or not. Less light for the same depth of field and the same equivalent field of view. I explained before, this is just a way around of micro four third. Obviously, if you close down your lens to get more depth of field, you lose light. That means another problem, you need to put your ISO higher a lot sooner than with smaller sensors. So that's a problem. Depending on what you do, but if you don't want to put high ISO, you're going to do it. And when you put your ISO higher, the higher you go, the less dynamic range you get. So you get the benefit of higher dynamic range, but then you lose it when you put your ISO higher. So you need to know that. And last but not least, if you want to have good quality full frame lenses, you're going to spend a lot more money. They're normally heavier, they're normally larger, so that could be a problem. So now let's go to medium format. Pro, the file has 16 bits of color, so you get, although your eyes don't actually see them, when you're going to retouch picture, then we're recovering areas, all this, it will be a lot better. When you recover shadows, it is a lot better. You recover, actually when I presented my GFX camera, I'll leave you the link here. It was stunning, the way I could recover shadows, impressive. If you want to have really shallow depth of field, no problem, you can have a lash that thin, just in focus, everything else will be out of focus, easy to get. Another point that is not actually due to medium format, but just to medium format, and the megapixel they put them they get now 102 million pixel, then it's easier to reframe. Some people think that you reframe just because you could not be close enough to your subject. Sometimes it has nothing to do with that, just because you need the picture for several things, or you don't know how your client will use them, and probably needs to cut and reframe, or from horizontal to vertical, for example, and you still need to have some pixels in there. So many people say, yeah, but if I've got 15 million pixels, I cut the picture in two, I still have 25. No, we speak about the surface. You need to cut to divide by 4. It means that if you had 25 million pixels and you cut the picture in half, you have only 6.25 left. So if you start from 100 million pixels, 102, you divide by 4, you still have 25 million pixels. So it's a big benefit. Another benefit is the way of making picture that can be understood as benefit or a problem, depends, is normally you work slower, you think more your pictures, it's not action photography, and it's closer to what we used to do in medium format or large format in film photography. Against, cons. Well, the depth of field, if you want to have everything in focus, is a real problem, same as with full frame. Let's say you want to do a landscape and you say, no, I'm going to do focus stacking, but let's say there are some trees and it's windy and they're moving, and you're going to make 10 pictures to get everything in focus and stack them, but the trees have moved. So that's a big problem. So it all depends on what you do. Maybe you can solve it or not, but you need to know that. Another point, well, the size and the volume of the gear is a lot higher than if we look at full frame or APS-C or Micro Four Third. Another point, the entry price is higher. Although medium format is a lot cheaper than it used to be, It's also cheaper than high-end full-frame cameras. It is still a ticket to start that is higher. You can find an APS-C camera, second-hand camera, for maybe 300 euros. But a medium format, even second-hand, you will not find for 200 euros. So it means you need to spend a lot more money to start in this format. Fourth point, the files, they're massive. 100 megabytes, it means you need a powerful computer to move them to, if you want to do some special effects, some processing, or you need a powerful computer. And same thing, the size is massive. It means you need storage, hard drive, backup drive, cloud, all this. It is really big. So you really need to have an advanced computer and a lot of space to store your pictures. So I hope with this you have a small idea. I just gave about 5 of the point that are important. But honestly, what is the best sensor? None. What is the worst one? None. It depends on what you want to do. And this is what so many people don't understand. You need first to see what you want to do to decide what is a sensor size that can respond to your needs. After we'll see the brand and the camera, all this. But this is so important. So some people think that when you have larger sensor, you can do more things. And that's not the way it works. If you want to do product photography and macro, it's a lot better to have micro four thirds. On the other way around, if you want to do something with a really sharp depth of field, it's a lot better to have a medium format. If you want to do, well, and so on. Okay, so it's important to understand that. If you don't know what you're going to do, you're not sure, then you have to go like play middle of the road, APS-C or full frame. If you want APS-C, there are mirrorless only now I would say one top quality, which is Fujifilm. If you want in reflex, there are many other options. You can get Pentax that is still making the K3 Mark III, okay? Otherwise, you can look at reflex but second-hand because they're not built anymore. The Nikon D500 for example was great, the Canon 70 is great, but as you see, if you look at mirrorless, you are so limited nowadays. If you look at APS-C, if you want top quality cameras, okay? I don't say Canon APS-C or a Nikon or Sony is no good. Just it's not as good as they can do with full frame. Not because of the sensor, because of the decision of the brand, okay? So it's so important you analyze that. If you want Nikon, Sony or Canon, yeah, mirrorless, you're better off going full frame because of the quality, the build quality of the camera, all this. But take into account that a body is one thing and then the lenses is another. So it's so important to analyze your needs, your budget, and see how much money you can spend on the body and then on the lens later. And don't listen to other people's needs that are probably different from yours. Or if you see someone that do exactly what you want to do, then you can speak to that person. Maybe you will find out it doesn't have actually the camera you should have, okay? But it's so important. So many people are telling full frame is the way. No, it depends. It can be full frame, can be APS-C, can be micro four thirds, can be medium format. Depends on you, not on anyone else. Not even me, not any YouTuber, no one. Actually, I made a video a few years ago that was telling, I think you don't need full frame. That was a big answer to that people then that was telling, you need to be to have full frame to be serious, to be good. And that's not the way it is. This is why I made this video. I still think the same thing. You don't need full frame. You need the tool you need. It can be full frame. It can be other 3 options. Here you have 4 options, okay? So I hope this video helps you decide what is best for you. Obviously, some people will add some positive and some negative in comments, no problem. So I hope you like this video. If you feel it may interest other people, please share it on social networks. If you have not done it yet, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, the small button down here and also a small bell. If you click on the bell, you will get notified when I upload a new video. Don't forget, I've activated the member area of my YouTube channel. I don't speak about gear there, I just speak about tuition, tips, making of all this about photography. Thank you so much. There's a join button just below. I leave you my website, ericgibaud.com. If you have any question, can leave a comment below. Also, leave your affiliated links in description. Please use them. That really helps me. By the way, if you buy at K&F Concept website, there's a link in description, or Lumina Neo. If you use the discount code ERIC10, you get a 10% discount. Thank you so much, that really helps me. Also, leave you my PayPal account in case you wanted to make a donation. Thank you very much, please take care of yourself, and see you soon. Bye!